Hey everybody, I forgot about this deck, but it's the Losheel Clockwork Scholar deck. It's an artifact creature deck, and specifically modular creatures, so this could be pretty fun. So Losheel himself says, prevent all combat damage that will be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. So, of course, that's going to be the bread and butter of the deck, artifact creatures. And whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under our control, we draw a card. Triggers only once per turn, but that can be very effective in making our deck crank through what it wants to do. All right, let's go through the bread and butter of the deck. So there are a few non-artifact creatures in here, but I think for good reason. Einok Bondkin has Outlast and gives all our creatures with counters on them first strike, so that's extremely important. So not only are they going to prevent the damage from them with the commander, we're also going to give them first strike, so that's kind of a nasty combo. Arcbound Bruiser, Modular 3, Arcbound Hybrid, Modular 2, Modular 1, Modular 2, Modular 1, Modular 1, like all of these are the modular creatures. Arcbound Bruiser, Hybrid, Arcbound Mouser, Prototype, Stinger, and Worker. So we got a few keywords, I mean we got Haste and Lifelink and Flying. But yeah, the modular is the most important part. When these creatures die, they move their counters to another target artifact creature, so that's really cool. And then we've got Crashing Drawbridge, which is a defender, but it is an artifact creature, and it can tap to give our creatures haste. So that's always very fun, especially for a white deck. Foundry Inspector makes our artifacts cost less. Hingewalker is probably less... I don't know, unless you were around with Herald Drain, this one's less known probably. But it's got Adamant, so we're going to spend 3 white mana on it, of course. And it enters a battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, because we'll spend the white mana. So 3/3 for 3, artifact creature, which could potentially get big with the different things we're going to be doing to it. Iron Apprentice and Iron Bully are very similar. They enter the battlefield with +1/+1 counters on them. Well, I guess Iron Bully puts it on it or a different creature. Iron Apprentice enters with its own, and when they die, when Iron Apprentice dies, it can move counters to another target creature, and Iron Bully has Menace. And then Iron League Steed, there's another one, Haste, Fabricate 1, so we can make a 1/1 servo on the side if we want, but we'll probably be putting +1/+1 counters on it, because that's kind of a theme of the deck. Knighted Mirror has Adapt 1, so it can also put counter on itself, and whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on it, it gains double strike until end of turn, so that's really useful. Mere Scrappling, you can sacrifice it to put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature. Paragon of Modernity, this one is a 2/2 flyer, and you can pay 3 and put a +1/+1 counter on it. It's basically an adamant activated ability, and there's just white mana in the deck, so it's going to be able to put a counter on itself. And it's got flying. Razor Golem has affinity for planes. There's a bunch of planes in the deck, so it'll cost 1 less for each planes we control. And then it's got Vigilance. Sparring Construct, when it dies, we put a +1/+1 card counter on target creature we control. And then we've got Supply Runners, which is not an artifact creature, but it enters and we put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature we control. Just like just put a bunch of counters on things. Alright, now we've got our card draw section. Basilica Spellbomb, you can pay 1 to sacrifice it to draw a card, or you can pay 2 and a white to sacrifice it to give a creature 2/2 and flying, and then we draw a card. So, you know, either way we're drawing a card. Filigree Familiar, when it enters to gain 2, and then when it dies, we'll draw a card, and it's an artifact creature. Fountainport Bell, I've gone over this in a different video, but I love this card. So we can enter, or have it enter, and then search for a basic land on the top, and then we can draw that basic land card, or we can just skip that altogether and just draw a card if we'd like for 2 mana. So in any color, that's pretty awesome. Golden Egg enters to draw a card, and then we can sacrifice it to gain life, because we don't really need the second ability to add mana of any color, because that's kind of useless in a monocolor deck. But yeah, we can gain life and then draw a card. Ichor Wellspring enters or is put into the graveyard, we draw a card. Implement of Improvement, we can sacrifice it to gain a life, or sorry, gain 2 life, and when it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, we'll draw a card. Potion of Healing, basically the same as Golden Egg, but the white version of it. Enter, draw a card, sack it, gain 3 life. Shoulder to shoulder, you just draw a card, but it's got support 2, which puts a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Again, supporting the deck. Sky Scanner, artifact creature enters, draw a card. Union of the Third Path, I actually really like this card. So draw a card and then gain life equal number of cards in your hand. This is what they need to do in white more. I think it's perfect for white. You gain life, but you're also drawing a card, and it shows the unity of your whole group, because that's what white's all about. So yeah, I really like that card design. Enablers. All right, this actually has way more enablers than I'm used to, but I don't know. I think this deck kind of needs it. I guess you could put more artifact creatures in it if you'd like. I was trying to focus on the modular stuff, so you could put in more artifact creatures if you'd like. But this one puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. Inspiring Roar, Mana Tithe. This helps us not lose our things. It's just a regular old, small counter spell, but it can be really frustrating sometimes. You're just like, counter spell, and then they're like, oh, I don't have any more mana, no. So that's kind of fun. So you could probably swap Mana Tithe for something else. Martyr for the Cause, not an artifact creature, but when it dies, we proliferate. So that'll make all our things bigger. Mere Retriever and Workshop Assistant and Sanctum Gargoyle will all return artifacts from our graveyard to our hand when they die, or when they enter. I guess when Gargoyle enters. So that's very important. And there are artifact creatures. Recommission does the same, so it's an artifact or creature from our graveyard to the battlefield, mana value 3 or less, and if a creature enters this way, it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, so that's pretty awesome. And then Silver Flame Ritual, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. Once again, it's kind of a newer version of Inspiring Roar, because it's got Adamant, and if 3 mana was spent to cast it, our creatures will gain Vigilance, so 3 mana spent to cast white mana. You know what I'm saying. Flex spots. So we've got Defend the Campus. This can give our creatures +1/+1 till end of turn as an anthem effect, or we can destroy a creature with power 4 or greater. Sunbeam spell. We can sacrifice it to gain 5 life, or we can sacrifice it to draw a card. So whatever is needed at the time. Thraben Charm can deal damage equal to twice the number of creatures in control to a different target creature. So we can destroy something, or we can destroy an artifact or an enchantment, or we can exile any number of players' graveyards if we need. Fantastic card. Unbound Potential. We can put 2 counters on each of up to 2 target creatures. Or sorry, 1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Or we can proliferate, or we can do both if we entwine. Again, it's very good. And in Pauper, there's like 3 cards that proliferate. So this is one of them. So that's a good stuff. First, let's skip down here past the lands first. Go to our nuance spots. So we don't really need these, but they kind of help the deck run. Whenever equipped creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So that's Armory of Iroas. So that could be really handy, especially since our creatures won't take combat damage with our commander out. And then Great Sword of Tyr. When it attacks, we'll put a +1/+1 counter on it, and we'll tap something that an opponent controls. So there's actually just a better version, but in white. Protection spells, we got Feat of Resistance, so we'll put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature, and then it gains protection from the color of our choice. That's fantastic. Our ramp spells here, we've got our Automated Artificer, taps colorless, spend on artifact spells or artifact abilities. Pretty simple. This one's the same as Hedron Crawler and Mannequin, just tapped out colorless. And then we got Campus Guide, which searches for a basic land onto the top of our library and then reshuffle. I guess we'll shuffle them, put it on top, whatever. But what's cool about this is that when we'll stack it with Losheel's ability, so then we'll just draw that land. So it enters, you search for the basic under the play, and then since it entered, because of Losheel, you'll draw the card. So that's kind of a fun little thing. So it's not technically mana ramp, but it can get the card to our hand. That's what's hard. It's hard to get real actual ramp in white, especially in Pauper. So that's kind of a way to do it. Same with Pilgrim's Eye and Skittering Surveyor. These two will bring the lands to your hand, but they are artifact creatures. Then we got Commander's Fear, of course. Tap for the white, and then we can sacrifice it to draw a card. Gold Mirror taps for white. Let's see. And then Ornithopter of Paradise taps for any color. Mirror or Mycosynth Wellspring. When it enters or is put in the graveyard, we'll search for a basic land in the hand. It's really quite good. Orazca Relic taps. It's just another mana rock, but we can sacrifice it to gain a life and draw a card if we have the City's Blessing. So that's always pretty handy. And then Wayfarer's Bauble, of course, search for a basic into play tapped. Now we've got our targeted removal. Targeted removal. So we've got Break Ties. This one we can reinforce to discard it to put a +1/+1 counter on something. Or we can destroy an artifact or an enchantment or exile a card from a graveyard. It's a very flexible card. Collar the Culprit destroys a creature with toughness 4 or greater. Our creatures aren't necessarily going to be the biggest on the board probably, so being able to destroy some of the biggest stuff from green is going to be very important. Disenchant destroys artifacts or enchantments. Same thing, destroys an artifact or enchantment, gain 4 life. Kill Shot destroys a target attacking creature. Fantastic. Skywhaler's Shot destroys a creature with power 3 or greater, and we scry 1. It's very important to get rid of those big creatures. And then we got Swift Response, destroy target tapped creature, and Wanderer's Strike exiles a creature, and then we proliferate. There's the other one. I mean, the curve is terrible, but it is Pauper, and but it does exile a creature, which is pretty great, and proliferating everything can be very useful. All right, let's go back up to our lands, which is just 28 plains. And then you could probably get rid of all of these, honestly. You probably don't need this many tapped lands. In fact, it's probably a terrible idea. Idyllic Grange, you could probably keep because it enters unless you control 3 or more planes. So that actually works pretty well in our favor. When it enters untapped, we'll put a +1/+1 counter on a creature we control. Fantastic. Drifting Meadow. Oops, somebody crashed upstairs. Jeez. Drifting Meadow and Secluded Steppe I like because they can cycle just in case we need that card. Again, you probably don't need them due to the being tapped or whatever, but hey, whatever. Ancient Den, I guess, doesn't enter tapped, but it is an artifact land. That counts towards an artifact count if that comes into play at some point. Then we got Kabira Crossroads, enters, gain 2 life. Sandstone Bridge enters, a target creature gets +1/+1 and vigilance till end of turn. And then Shejiri Steppe enters, and the target creature we control gains protection from the color of our choice till end of turn. That one's actually really good, just a free protection for whatever, and then we can attack, and then it's great. I guess it doesn't matter that much because our things can't take damage from it, but whatever. All right, that's been Losheel's little modular army. Let me know what you think. Check out the other decks that we've made, and this is a terrible outro. TCGplayer. Purchase your cards there. There's a link down below. You can click that, and that helps out the channel. Same with if you click the Milkman Proxy link in the description below. That helps the channel as well, and I get stuff from that, like gold and jewels and treasure. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week for your weekly dokes. Oh my gosh, this is the worst outro of all time. Just cut me off now.